Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Artist Within. I am your host, Casey Bell, and today's guest is Ira Domnitz, an art legal counsel. Let's get started. Okay. So you are in the profession of law, specifically an art legal counsel. What was the earliest age you could remember where you realized that was something not only that existed, but something you would probably be interested in being?
That's a great question. The answer to that would be I've always been interested in art and science and music and things of that nature from a young age. I like writing stories. I play in a band right now. Actually, I'm a drummer for a band. Um, and I just really thought it'd be great to actually utilize or get into a field in which I could actually go to conferences, go to conventions, be an expert on art law of all things. And it just so happens that when I was younger, I went to a couple 20th anniversary Doctor Who conventions, lots of artists there, just lots of neat things, paintings, pictures, all sorts of people, cosplay. And I said to myself, probably elementary school, it'd be great if I can somehow make a living working in a field like this, where I can actually bring my abilities in artistics to help artists. And frankly, I'm not that good of an artist myself. I'm not going to lie about that. I don't have the talent level that 99% of my people I represent have, and the only 1% that I represent that don't have the talent level, those would be the ones that aren't doing art related things at all. Those would be just the business people. So I'm about equal with them.
Cool. So how did you start how did you get into the business? How did you start? How did you get to where you are now, your journey?
Well, sure. I went to law school, and I went to law school in the late 1997 to 2000 time frame. So at that point, things were just starting to get involved with what I would call sort of the superhero or sci-fi revolution. Prior to that point, people would watch movies, they'd watch Star Wars, occasionally something would come out like that. But it really didn't take off and explode like it has now until essentially the Lord of the Rings movies, as well as Harry Potter, as well as obviously superhero movies. Once those really took off, it really sort of skyrocketed me working in those areas of law. And the reason why is because, and I present on this all the time, if you look at the top 20 movies, top 20 movie grossers of all time, with adjusted dollars, 19 of actually it's more like 17 of the top 20 are actually sci-fi fantasy movies. One of the other ones that's not in the sci-fi fantasy movie category would be Titanic. And the other two that are borderline are two Fast and the Furious movies in that series. So those really are considered sort of fantastic, almost urban fantasy type things. Obviously, you can't, parachute with a car, start it up driving on a road, and immediately, launch it, say 300 miles an hour into a canyon and still survive. So there's a lot of fantastical and sort of, if you would, fantasy elements to that as well. But really, that basically shows a huge swing in the way just the whole world is viewing entertainment and how they're viewing movies and how they want to go about doing things. One of the most fantastic movies that's come out that actually is involved, again, superhero, Black Panther. Just phenomenal movie, phenomenal acting, phenomenal amounts of generation of interest in superheroes and specifically ethnic superheroes, which is really just fantastic to see. So it's not just simply a Caucasian superhero motif. There, across the board, there are a lot of ranges for how sort of the fantasy, artistic, artist, superhero area has grown.
Great. So what kind of services do you offer to an artist?
Sure. I offer everything from copywriting. Copyrights are, basically they're government documents that protect artistic works expressed in tangible mediums. So I see behind you, you have a variety of paintings that are put on the wall. Those would be a two-dimensional work of art. Since they're actually there, they could be copyrighted. Once you actually get a copyright, you get certain statutory rights associated with the copyright. You can stop others from making derivative works of the copyright. You can also basically, in certain instances, if somebody infringes your copyright, get attorney's fees awarded to you in court cases. You can also stop others from, like I said, not just copying, but making derivative works. So let's take those 3 paintings behind you. If somebody made a version like the first one, instead of having a kind of a blue and purple motif, they made it into a green and yellow motif, that would be considered derivative work. So I help people to get copyrights to protect them. Also, you need to have a federal registered copyright in order to bring a court case against somebody to stop them from copying. If you're an artist, a musician, absolutely essential you have copyrights on your music. Otherwise, people can just copy them and start playing them all over the place. You know, there are what we call common law rights in terms of you do get a copyright once you actually do artistic work or once you put it in a tangible medium. But unless you register it, you can't really go to court and say to the judge, I need you to stop this person. So that's one thing I do. The other thing I help artists with is branding. A lot of artists have brands. Specifically, let's take any Little Nas. Let's take any person like that. Beyonce. All these people have brand names that basically people associate with the act. So therefore, you have to help them protect their branding. That's how they make a lot of money. If let's say Beyonce makes a perfume, it needs to be actually under the Beyonce label, the brand Beyonce. So Beyonce can protect it and make sure nobody makes a knockoff, or nobody makes a product saying that somehow Beyonce is actually endorsing this product, making money off of it, and Beyonce really isn't doing that. So those are just 2 common ways I help artists to actually protect themselves.
So according to the law, once you take a picture, once you paint something, it's automatically yours, it's copywritten. But as you said, without paperwork, it's hard to prove in the court of law. So when should an artist get serious about dealing with the business side of art, not just creating, but realizing there is a business side?
Well, I will say that there are a couple things that are immediate things that will draw attention to people. One is publication. For example, if you're a great author and you write fan fiction, but you have no intention of publishing it, just your friends read it, you don't intend on making any money on it, it's really not going to be as big a deal in terms of you seeking to get a copyright because you're not seeking to commercialize it. However, at some point, if you're seeking to commercialize anything, whether it be a song, whether it be actually a painting, whether it be anything, you absolutely want to, at that point, make sure that you get the copyright filed with the government. Part of the reason, too, is that once you publish a work, your rights start to get sort of truncated, if you will, as you wait further along down the time before you register the work. So let's say you register a work or you make something, you make a book, and you actually publish the book and you sell the book, but you don't file a copyright on the book. And 2 years lapses, and then all of a sudden, somebody makes a knockoff version of it, it becomes a US bestseller. Well, some of the statutory rights you would have had along the way after you publish it actually lapse if you don't publish it in a timely manner. And the reason why the government does that is really simple. They want to encourage people to actually file their copyrights. If you basically wait until something becomes popular and then sort of play a gotcha game of going after people after the fact, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years after the fact, they don't really want to reward you for that type of behavior. They want you to basically, in the first instance, put people on notice that you have a copyright on it and also go through the copywriting process.
Great. Thanks for that advice. Can you give some advice to the artists on how to start, whether they're going to find help to do it or they do it themselves? What is some advice for those who, even though it's kind of hard to believe there are artists out there who don't have this information, and there are still people who really do not know that this is important and you should know this, you should study it, you should research it. What is 3 tips you can give an artist?
The tips. There's multiple questions in there, but I'll start with the 3 tips. One tip is know the information for yourself. Look up the information, find the information, be your own source of the information. A lot of times when companies get involved with artists, they realize artists don't know the law. They realize artists aren't really knowledgeable necessarily on how things work. So what they'll do is they'll tell an artist, for example, I'll prepare this contract. Don't you worry about it. Everything will be fine. Leave it to me. 90% of the time, everything will be fine. Leave it to me means at some point the artist is going to be deprived of some rights that the artist didn't think they're going to be deprived of, whether it's them getting a proper royalty or whether it's them owning a copyright. You'd be surprised how many companies just take over copyright ownership. Whether it's just not even filing a copyright to the US government. Some people say, I'll register you with my literary guild. That's not a federal copyright registration. It's not the same thing. I've had people that have run multiple businesses that have come to me and say, here's my copyright. And I said, that's not really a copyright. You basically just had a company tell you they're going to put you in their registry, but not file a federal registration. So that's one thing that artists definitely need to be aware of. The other thing that artists definitely need to be aware of is understanding what their goals are with their work. So if your goal of your work is to actually generate income or look to actually form a business out of it, you have to treat it like a business asset. So the first thing everybody does when you have a business asset is you protect it. So once you actually start looking at yourself as a business or an artist who's going to be doing this as a profession, you need to work into protecting your assets, protecting your copyrights, protecting your brand name, filing corporate structures so that you have a corporation. So let's say if something goes wrong, they're not going after you individually, they're going after the corporation. A variety of those things, once you decide to take it from sort of a hobby into a business, you certainly are going to need legal help at that point. The other thing is that there are a wide variety of lawyers that are out there. There are lawyers that do entertainment law. Those are lawyers that would focus on, let's just say, people getting concerts or writers with concerts or contracts that involve with concerts and getting venues and getting clearance and getting licenses. There are other lawyers that basically are involved in copyright registrations, where basically I do both of these, but copyright registrations is the artist will come to me and say, I have this work, or how do I protect these works? Well, do you have a collection? Are these photographs? Is this a whole sort of collection of photographs, hundreds of photographs that you've taken? Is this a collection of stuff that's two-dimensional or three-dimensional models? How do we actually look to actually protect it? Those are those types of individuals. And then, of course, there are litigation associates or litigation attorneys that will basically help people and protect them once they do have a copyright. You have a copyright, somebody's stolen your song, they're playing it on the airwaves. How do we go about protecting that? So what you have to do as a consumer is look and say, what are my actual needs? Where do I need to go? And you can shop around. Copyright law is actually federal law. So you don't have to necessarily get, let's say you live in California, you don't have to get a lawyer in California. You don't have to get a lawyer in New York if you're in New York. I have a large amount of clients that are actually clients from California. I have some clients that are actually from overseas. I'm actually based in Houston, Texas. And of course, I've got a large amount of clients in Houston, Texas as well.
Cool. So I was going to ask you a question, but now that you said you're from Texas, were you okay during the storm?
The ice storm?
Yes.
The Snowmageddon, as they call it, or as we like to refer to it as Snowvid, where you're basically trapped in a house because of the snow. I was actually, my family did fine. It just so happens that my subdivision is a newer subdivision, so they have more current technology. So we didn't really lose power for much of a period of time at all. And because I happened to participate in our local municipality utilities district board, some of the people from them actually came over to my house before the storm hit. So we piped it up so that it has enough protection it could survive an Alaska winter.
Awesome.
In fact, it looks kind of funny. It looks basically like a insulated snowman instead of a pipe right now. It's so much insulation it has.
That's good to hear. So on the side of law,
Sure.
For anyone out there who's considering, whether they're in high school or in college, considering being a lawyer, specifically in art, what are some 3 tips you can give them? So I'm sure you've made some mistakes in your past. Tips you can give them, something they should know before becoming a lawyer, something they should know before applying for that job, something they should know before opening up their own practice.
Sure.
help them out?
I actually speak for some of the local high schools on their career day a lot. And one of the things that actually gets people excited is a lot of people see Jerry Maguire, or they see these movies in which all of a sudden the movie becomes very popular and the lawyer is going about and the lawyer is driving a Ferrari and the lawyer has the top down and the lawyer gets phone calls and beautiful women or men are hanging out by their side. And it's just glamorous. And they walk into the courtroom and everybody looks beautiful. Within 20 minutes, the court case is decided and the judge just thinks they walk on air, and that's not reality. Reality is that most attorneys don't even go to a courtroom ever. Most attorneys actually, once they get their law degree, they practice a lot in their office. They actually will draft documents. Some attorneys will never meet clients. Some attorneys basically will just draft documents for businesses. They won't go out to client meetings. They won't have those fancy lunches that you see on TV. There are some attorneys that, depending on the field you want to go into, that actually do get to go out and meet a lot of people. I am very lucky in terms of what I do. I speak at a lot of comic conventions. And I speak also for University of Texas. I do some programs for the continued legal education program. So what I do is I actually go out and speak for both attorneys and paralegals on topics that I find interesting, whether it be cosplay, which is clearly an art form, all the way to convention conduct. Like if you go to a convention, which has tons of art, what is your conduct you should do? If you're an artist and you're there and you're selling Batman prints, do you have the rights to sell Batman prints? How do you get past it? Is it a copyright violation or is it a trademark violation? I go speak all over. This year I was actually invited to go to San Diego Comic-Con before they actually closed it down, but hopefully next year I'll go. I'm going to be doing panels at Houston's version, which is Comic Palooza, which gets 62,000 people. So if you really want to pursue something and you want to become a lawyer, look into see people who do that type of law, how they do it, what they do, and find out how they got to that pathway. It just so happened that being a nerd as a young kid actually helped me to solidify, into the ranks of nerd attorneys who can speak at comic conventions. And now since it's popular, I get to meet a lot of A-list actors and actresses and write their contracts and go to the green room with them and everything. It's just kind of neat. I enjoy that a lot. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is always stay in school. School it's the best thing to do. School basically helps you. It doesn't give you a career. It doesn't make you successful. What it does is it provides you tools to increase your chances of being successful. Success is an inner drive that comes from within. So if somebody is driven to be successful, their school might make a difference, but it's not going to make as big a difference as somebody who's not inner driven. And what I mean by this is this. You can be extremely successful and never go to school. Eddie Murphy's a great example. Fantastic actor, succeeded, he didn't have to go to school. There are many artists who don't go to school. There are many people also who go to school and are very educated, but just don't have the drive to go forward and do what they need to do to become successful lawyers or achieve what they want to do. So what I suggest doing is always go to school and always stay driven of a focus on your target of what you want to do. And don't be worried about setbacks. Everybody gets setbacks. On my first day of law school, when I went to law school, my father actually died my first day of law school. And I went to law school in Boston, and I'm not from Boston. So I didn't know anybody there. My father died. I had to go back to Wisconsin for the funeral and everything else. I still persevered in going to law school. And my family, my dad died, they declared bankruptcy. There's no money, there's nothing. But I persevered and stuck with it. And if you have a focus and a dream, you can achieve it. And I don't care who you are. I mean, you can do it. You can absolutely do it. There are programs, there are tools, there are things out there. If you're driven and you want to become the best there is at one thing, you can certainly achieve it. So that's number two. The other thing is, and this is sort of with that, is always go to the top school that you can go to and afford. And it sounds strange, but it's really not. Because if you're going to compete with other people that are driven, you need to separate yourself sort of from the pack. So if you can afford to go to, let's just say, state school A, or you can go to private school B, and private school B is ranked higher, your chances of getting a job out of private school B, if you can afford to go there, are higher. So go to the highest school you can go to. Always dream, always reach for the highest success you can achieve. You may, let's say, get a degree at, I'll use an example here in Houston, University of Houston, and you may be the best lawyer that ever came out from University of Houston Law School. But what if you could be the best lawyer that ever came out of University of Texas Law School, which is ranked a little bit higher? So don't ever sell yourself short. If you can get into your top school, try to go to your top school. Always seek to be the best. That's basically my advice.
The first thing you said, I completely agree with as far as I always believe parents, once their child is high school age and they know what they want to do, they should go somewhere to apprentice, because television makes jobs look 100% easy and great and glamorous, as you said, and wonderful. By the time you actually get there and see what you have to do, it's like, whoa, it's completely different. And so I definitely believe in taking your child to be apprenticed somewhere and ask questions, because television doesn't really show you. I mean, when you watch Law and Order, the case is over in an hour, and there's never been a case that's been over in an hour.
That doesn't happen at all. There's no commercial breaks either. I can say this, and most of the people that are going to court look more like me. They don't look like the fantastic, Mariska Hargitay, I believe her name is, or any people like that go in Law and Order and just walk in there and, wow, they had their own beauticians there who did their hair right before they walked in the courtroom. No, it's mostly like, it was windy outside, Your Honor. I'm sorry. Let me just try to push my hair down so I can, proceed with my case. And the courtrooms, some courtrooms do look very pretty like that, but no, not usually. Usually they're not. Usually it's not even windows. So, I'll just say it's not like it is in TV. And by the way, some of the municipality courts and the traffic courts, they don't even look like courtrooms. You just be like, yeah, they're meeting somebody in this back room, and I guess that's the way they're doing it.
Well, that was I don't remember what grade I was in, but they took us to a courtroom, and I went, this does not look like TV at all. This is not what I thought it was.
Yeah, exactly. And what's even better is I've had the pleasure of some of the federal courtrooms, because I help judge some activities they have for law students and things. They let us, when we're judges, go back to the judges' chambers and stuff. And that's another shockaroo, because you think, oh, they're going to have these luxurious palaces where the judges, have grapes sitting on trays and people are serving them, and it's fantastic. And then you're like, wow, they've got a restroom like a hotel, and they've got like benches, and their desk is just as messy as mine. Okay, I guess. It's kind of a wake up.
Yeah, big wake up call. So I want to thank you for sharing. I have one more question for you, a fun question.
Yes.
In your years of researching, if there is a lawyer out there that inspired you, a lawyer that has done something great, whether they be dead or alive, and you had the chance to meet them and have a conversation and lunch with them, who would that be and why?
Wow, that's a great question. I work with a ton of really good lawyers on a daily basis, and I work again with sometimes lawyers and against that don't hold my admiration as much. I can say this, a lot of people that really inspire, there's no real one person or fictional lawyer character that actually inspires me to the point where I'm just, that's the person I'd want to meet or talk to. I can say this though, and this is a little bit different. Some movies, although they're fictitious and they really don't involve real people, there's a great movie called The Verdict with Paul Newman, and it came out in the 80s. And the movie actually did something that lawyers couldn't achieve. It actually got the public and the politicians to understand that the way we actually do law in the courtrooms needed to change. And the movie sort of brought to light why it needed to change, and a great change occurred in just about every state's civil procedure. And here's what I mean. Back in the day, probably way back before you were born, this was back in the day, we used to have shows like Perry Mason, things like that. I don't know if you're familiar with Perry Mason. Yeah. But Perry Mason, they used to have these things all the time, surprise witnesses, right? where they go to court and all of a sudden the court calls a witness, a surprise witness, that basically nobody knew was going to be coming, or let's say defense counsel knew was going to be coming, but plaintiffs didn't. And it was the old gotcha game of, we have a surprise that's going to be shown to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and it didn't give the attorneys a chance to really prepare for the surprise. The problem that actually comes up with that is, when you have a situation like that, you don't really get a fair opportunity to legally address an issue. What you really are having a situation is surprise, got you, how can you deal with a surprise, versus how can we actually really look at what the issues of the case are. As a direct result of the movie The Verdict and several other movies and several other movements, I guess you would say, the civil procedure rules have changed drastically. Now, you have to actually present ahead of time to the court a list of your witnesses. You can't do these things of, I mailed myself this document, I'm going to open it before the court and surprise everything. You can't do that anymore. What you have to do is you have to give both sides a fair chance to see the facts and to really adjudicate the cases as they are based on the merit, based on the law and based on the facts. So in that regard, I guess you could say Paul Newman's character, although he's not a real character, what it did is it did actually inspire a movement to actually retool the law, to make it so that aspect of the law is no longer there. And by the way, that's a huge change. That's a gigantic change, because now everything ranging from civil rights to medical malpractice to just patent infringement to copyrights to everything is affected, because now there's no gamesmanship. Now there's no, oh, I hid this witness away and you couldn't talk to them. And they used to do that. We send this witness away to Tahiti for a month, and they got a nice tan and drank drinks, and we had our trial in the meantime, and nobody got to talk to them. No. That type of thing, that's over. Those people, you can't do that anymore. So that's how I would answer that question. I hope that's a fair answer. But I think that although a fictional setting, it really did help to make a drastic change in the way American jurisprudence works.
I like that answer because I didn't know I know now that you can't present a witness without both sides knowing, but I didn't know that's how that happened.
Yeah, it's basically how it happened. It's a great movie. I highly suggest it. It's got some good acting. It's the last movie James Mason ever did. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a very good actor. Paul Newman was in it. The basic premise is that somebody died on an operating table, and now the hospital and the doctors and their lawyers are trying to sort of hide the facts, so Paul Newman, who's a plaintiff's lawyer, can't get an award for his client. It's essentially what it comes down to. And it's a really, really well done movie. They use it as a teaching tool for a lot of law schools on how to do depositions, on how to present evidence, on how to do a lot of things. So it's just anybody who wants to become a lawyer, they always tell them, pick up this book or that book. I say pick up that movie. It really is absolutely worth it. It's a great performance.
You're watching the artist. You're watching the artist within.
Here at the law firm of Stevens, Domnitz & Meineke, we help our clients protect their ideas, art, and intellectual property. For example, we help protect trademarks.
We also help our clients get patents on their inventions.
We help our clients get copyrights on music, on fashion, even cosplay.
So if you have any questions on how to protect your art, invention, or brand, please give us a call for a brief consultation. We look forward to working with you.
That is all the time we have for you today on The Artist Within. I want to thank our guest, Ira Domnitz, for stopping on by, and of course you, the audience, for taking the time to watch. Thank you. Have a great day.